Great.
Started.
Then we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to Pitching Your Research. This workshop or webinar is really to help you prepare for pitching, but I also want to prepare you to actually talk and make a connection, whether you're doing a pitch competition like the one that's coming up here in August, and you have a minute to talk about your research, or if you're doing a 5-minute pitch, or if you're just having a casual networking conversation with someone. Learning how to talk about your research to other people is a highly prized skill that will do you very well throughout your career. And so working on that and practicing talking about your research and connecting with other people around it, no matter what their familiarity might be with your research area, is a very important skill. And so that's what we're going to try to help with today. And we're actually going to start, though. I'm going to turn this over to Joseph and let you have the opportunity to actually talk about this amazing opportunity coming up in August.
Thank you, Laura. And yes, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this a little bit more. So many of you I recognize from names and faces, and I'm very excited to see you here because this is actually preceding what is a true competition for postdocs that will be on August 12th. So the 2020 Society of Postdoctoral Scholars pitch competition, research pitch competition, which will be on August 12th. And this was spearheaded by some of the SOPS leadership in collaboration both with the International Center and the Office of Technology Commercialization. So I want to make sure that we thank all the partners in this. And yeah, the idea is to really kind of hone in that very critical skill of pitching an idea. And that can be in a commercial space, that can be in a research space. You know, people tend to think about this, you know, as they come up with new ideas for startups, but it's also important to have the skill when you're in a lab meeting and you want to start a new project and say, hey, I've got this idea, like let's talk about it, and really kind of setting those ideas at all different stages, or at conferences when you're looking for a job, which is that's where I'm concerned, and I really wanted you to excel when you're out there looking for a job, because you're selling yourself and your ideas and your research. With that, I really invite you to apply. If you haven't received the announcements for where to apply, please send me an email and I'll share the link with you guys. It's really a great opportunity to compete and win. The other thing to be said is that there will be cash prizes for this competition, so that's always a bonus. Thank you. With that, I'll give it back to Laura and take it away.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat, so if they would like to email you and get sent that opportunity application, I'd love for them to be able to do that. So next, I'd like to turn it over to Tanya. Tanya is our Associate Director here at the Office of Technology Commercialization, and she's going to give you a brief overview of what we do and also opportunities for you to engage around technology commercialization. Tanya?
Thank you, Laura. So first of all, I'm very excited about our office participating with you guys in this opportunity. And so it gives me some time to tell you about what we do. And we work with postdocs and graduate students, so it gives me an opportunity to kind of do a commercial for our program there. But our office, our mission is to advance innovation that makes a difference. And so you say, what does that mean? So we work with researchers and entrepreneurs across campus to help them assess their technologies and look to commercialize it. And we help them with strategies for commercialization, strategies for patenting. Our goal is kind of to help build Kentucky's innovation ecosystem, and also cultivate entrepreneurship. So as I mentioned, we interact with researchers. How we might interact with you as a postdoc or graduate student may be that you're part of a lab that has some discovery that you think has commercial potential. And so what you would do to start the process with us is have a conversation, and you can reach out to anybody in our office. It could be Laura, myself, Raja, who's you're going to hear from later, or anybody else, and say, hey, I think I have an idea that could be patented or commercialized. And so we would talk you through that process and try to understand what your product or service or idea is, and then help you to get inserted in the whole commercialization process. Along the way, when you're going from discovery to commercialization, We help you determine, as I mentioned, patent strategies, commercialization strategies. We have assistance through coaching if you decide that a startup is the best route to commercialization. We have programs that help you with that. Laura leads our Launch Blue program, which has a UK component to it. And so through that program, you would learn more about your product and where it fits in the marketplace, and who your potential customers might be, or your target market, and whether or not anybody would be willing to pay money for your product. And so if startup is not the best route, then we have another group of people that do licensing to startup companies. So we may say that your technology has value, but startup is not the way to get the value from it. The best way is to license to an already established company. So we have a group of people, Raja is a part of our commercialization and licensing group, and they would try to find somebody who's interested in licensing your technology. So just a few of the other things we do, if you guys have ever been involved in a material transfer, where you're sending material out to other labs across the country, or they're sending it to you, there's an agreement that has to be in place. We have somebody that manages that. If you want to talk to someone in industry or about your idea, then we would want to put in place a confidential disclosure agreement. So you may interact with us that way. Basically, we're trying to help you protect your discoveries, and we're trying to help you commercialize them. And if you'd like to know more about that, I will put the link to our webpage in the chat, and you can connect with us through the webpage. We have a newsletter that comes out once a month and talks about all of our commercialization efforts. We also have a Twitter handle and a LinkedIn page, so you can connect with us that way too. But I'll put our website in the chat, and then you can connect all those other ways from there. So I also want to make you aware of our Otc Fellow program, and this is a program not in a traditional sense of fellows like you guys probably are familiar with, but it's more of an experiential learning opportunity. And so we hire what we call Otc Fellows to work in our office, and they do all of our upfront initial market and patent assessment work. And this is really important information for our office. So they're building this foundation for us to then make decisions about whether or not we want to invest more resources into a particular technology. So it's really important work. And over the last 3.5 years, we've had about 15 postdocs and graduate students work in our office as fellows. And one day you may be working on a medical device, or it might be a therapeutic or a biomarker, anything you can imagine from across UK's campus, because of all the different colleges that we have. And it's most of the things we see are in the hard sciences, but we do get from time to time things from at the College of Education or the College of Social Work, where it's maybe some sort of app that they've created. So having this experience could lead you to a career in technology transfer, which is what we do. And we have some PhDs that work in our office. We have people with MBAs, we have people with law degrees. So we're a very diverse group ourselves from background. Or it could help you in the career that you're trying to pursue. So I mentioned we've got 15 alums that are Otc Fellows, and they're working in all different areas. Some of them, once they went through our program, decided to change course in terms of their career. And some of them are doing tech transfer work. Some of them, one guy, he came in and he was in the law school. He was a third-year law student, and he already knew he wanted to be a patent attorney. But what this opportunity did was it helped to increase his knowledge and skills. And one of the things that we find out, and it'll be interesting if you subscribe to our newsletter, the next one coming out, we're starting a series where we're going back and catching up with these fellows and finding out what they're doing. But what they tell us is in their job interviews is that the thing that pops out for the interviewer more than anything is their time in our office. And so they want to know what they did and how were they able to help. So that's I think that's all I have to say about the fellows. And again, if you have an interest, let me know. I'll put our website in the chat, and I'd be happy to talk to any of you about it. Thanks.
Great. Go ahead, Joseph.
I just wanted to add, we've had several Society of Postdoctorals, well, we've had at least one that I know of, Society of Postdoctoral Scholars exec members who was an OTC fellow. And I wanted to add that this is a 10-hour-a-week opportunity, if I
That's correct, and I failed to mention that. So we do pay. It's $15 an hour for about 10 hours a week, and we ask you to make a 1-year commitment. And Stephanie Davis was the one that she just left us last year. She was great.
Yeah, and so my office is aware of this program, and if you have agreement with your sponsoring professor as a postdoc, you can do this while you continue your actual position. So this is how it works for postdocs. So this is not something that you'd have to quit your job to do, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Tanya and Joseph. All right, we're going to move on into our learning part. So pitching. What is pitching about? Well, pitching is about making a connection with whatever audience or to whomever you're speaking to. And that's how I want you to think about it. Don't think about pitching as trying to necessarily get money or win a prize, but it's actually connecting with people. And I think if you take some of the pressure off, especially if you're pitching in this competition coming up, it can make you nervous. Just let that go. What you're really trying to do anytime you're talking about your research is make a connection with someone and help them to understand the value of this amazing work that you're doing, or convince them to, and as Joseph was saying, convince them to allow you to pursue an avenue of research that you're passionate about. So let's figure out where to start. And I think there are 2 questions you need to ask yourself. Sit down and say, who am I speaking to? And what are they looking for? And some of this is obviously going to change based on the situation. So who are you speaking to? Who is your audience? Your audience might be a poster session. Like we said, it might be a conference that you're going to, a networking event, a competition, showcase, or demo day, or maybe you're giving a presentation at a conference or to a class or to your lab, or maybe you're sharing your research with students here at UK. Maybe you're invited to come and speak at a class. So the important part that I'm trying to say is figure out who the audience is, what kind of event is it, and what is their familiarity with the research that you're doing. Are these people in a class, taking a class or at a conference that is specific to your research area or industry area? Then they might have some more familiarization with what you're talking about. If you're at a competition or a networking event or at a showcase or a demo day, they may have less basic knowledge about the area you're researching. So thinking about where your audience is and where they're most likely to be coming from and their knowledge about what you're going to talk about will help you frame where you need to start communicating. And what are they looking for? Are they looking, does your audience want more information? Are you educating them? Are they possibly looking to collaborate with you or looking for partners around their research? Are they looking for an opportunity to invest? Some of you might be looking for that, or an opportunity to license or look for new discoveries or sponsor research. That might be something that you run into later. Maybe they're just curious. Maybe they're here because they're curious about the topic, but whatever it is, they're trying to open a dialogue with you about this topic. And maybe you're trying to do the same. You want to connect with others meaningfully around your research. That's what you want out of this engagement. And so sitting down and trying to think through that before you start organizing your pitch or organizing your presentation is really to come at it from the perspective of your audience and understand where they're starting. Use language effectively. So I think this is something that our partners we're partnering with this competition with the International Center. A lot of postdocs are from around the world, very diverse, and maybe you are not a native English speaker, and you're probably going to a lot of conferences and you're talking to a lot of other postdocs. Maybe English is not their native language either. So most people, they might not be native English speakers. They're probably not experts or as deep experts as you are in the research that you're doing or in your research area. So make sure to avoid using certain things that are not going to be helpful to the conversation. Don't use jargon. Stay away from technical terms or special terms that people who are outside your research area may not be familiar with. The worst thing you want to do is walk away from a presentation and realize the audience has not been able to keep up with you and they had no idea what you were talking about because you were using such specific language that they weren't able to follow you and weren't able to understand. Avoid acronyms and idioms, especially if you have a timed pitch. If you have to stop and explain what SOPS means, then that's taking time out of your ability to pitch, and it's also distracting to the audience. So instead of using acronyms or idioms, unless you know your audience very well and know they're very familiar with those, I would avoid them just in the ability to clearly communicate. And again, the two things I like to highlight here is use simple words and be concise. That's the best thing that you can possibly do, especially if English is not your native language and you or your audience, you might not have English speakers in the audience and they might be trying to keep up with you. Don't, like we said, use very simple language that anyone could understand and maybe even use with you to open that dialogue, and be concise. Don't use 20 words when 5 will do, especially when you're in a pitch competition or you're in, you have a very limited time frame to communicate. If you keep it simple and you keep it concise, it will help you communicate clearly while maintaining and being able to stay within your time limit. And that's really important when you're pitching in a competition because there's a lot of pressure and you don't have a lot of time and you want to be clear because you want the judges or the audience to clearly communicate, to clearly understand what it is you're trying to say, and you're already under time pressure. So use simple words and be concise. Those are the two best things I can possibly tell you for any situation under which you are pitching under pressure and under a time limit. So, and I think that's also good if you're approaching an audience that you, like I said, that you might not know. You might not know what their familiarity is with your research area or your topic. And so starting using simple words and then kind of seeing where they're at and building on that. You might be at a poster session and you're talking to somebody, and at first you may start pretty basic language. And then as you are speaking to them, you might realize that they have more familiarity with your area of research, and you can start using some more, getting in deeper and using some more of the jargon and technical terms because they're able to keep up with you. But always start simple in every interaction, and you can build up to things that are more complicated if that's where your audience is. So I like to use something called the grandmother test, and I know all of us have grandmothers. Some of, maybe you have to adopt someone else's grandmother in order to run this test, but try to explain it in a way that your grandmother can understand. In fact, if you're practicing for a pitch or you're practicing for an upcoming poster session, maybe call Gigi or Gammy or your grandma and say, I'd just like to talk to you for a second, grandma, and kind of explain what it is I do. And so you want her to be able to walk away easily understanding what you've communicated. So you're going to use those simple words. You want her to feel confident engaging with you. So if she has a question, you've used terms that she can engage around so that she can ask questions. And then, and like I said, engaging, just being able to carry that conversation with you. So if you call Gigi or Mimi and she's having a hard time following what you're saying, maybe it's time to reassess and ask her to maybe repeat back to you. Like, so based on what I've told you, Gigi, Mimi, what is it that you think I do? And she'll be able to actually help you out quite a lot. So my Mimi is a great resource for me if I'm talking about something. If I can explain it in a way in which she can understand and ask me questions, then I know I'm doing a good job. Of course, then your grandmother may be, a Nobel Prize winner in your research area. Who knows? I've seen all sorts. So, and then you might have to find another Gigi. But it's a really good test to use. And if your grandmother is not a native English speaker, that's even better. That way you can engage with her and make sure that you're communicating in a way that she also can understand. So tone is a big thing to either help or hurt you. Obviously, when I started this presentation, I kind of set the tone by saying we were going to be having a conversation. It was a workshop. It was supposed to be a dialogue that you could ask questions. So matching your tone to whatever event or circumstance you're in is really important. But tone, do you sound bored? If you sound bored or you sound nervous or shy, they will be too. You know, they might be reluctant to ask questions if you sound like you're really not that interested in talking about it. It might just be that you are reluctant or shy about it or a little nervous, but try to feed in some of the energy and excitement that brought you to this research area and topic in the first place. And that will really communicate over to your audience, and it will get them excited and interested too. Smile when you talk. So research has concluded that even if someone can't see you, like right now, I'm not able to see all of your wonderful faces, but you can hear the smile in my voice, and it encourages you to engage. So when you're speaking on the phone, even, or maybe at this pitch competition coming up in August, it's over Zoom. They may not be able to see you. Maybe they're paying attention to the slide, but they can hear the smile in your voice, and it helps them to engage. It helps them to stay engaged. You're excited, you're smiling, it's coming through your voice. And again, match the tone. Is it conversational? Is it a formal event? If it's a little more formal, you might want to take, have that tone that matches that presentation. Are you having fun? A pitch competition is fun. So, there might be a lot of excitement. I know a local competition here that we have every couple months. It's called 5 Across. They have 5 entrepreneurs come on. They get 5 minutes to pitch their startup. And it's a very fun, crazy atmosphere. And so they really want to match that energy and have that fun. Always be an expert. So being an expert doesn't mean you have to use fancy terms or fancy jargon or fancy anything. It's really about being knowledgeable so that you can explain it at whatever level your audience is and sounding like you know what you're talking about. So again, that could be that confidence coming through your voice, but endeavor always to sound like an expert and to be approachable. Again, the whole point of this is to open a dialogue. So even if you only have a minute to pitch or 5 minutes or a couple of minutes at a poster session, you never know where that conversation might lead. Someone might catch up with you after your pitch and say, I would really like to talk to you more about the research that you're doing. It sounded really fascinating, and I think there's an opportunity for us to collaborate or for me just to know more. So always endeavor to be approachable, have open body language. I mean, again, they may not be able to see you, but, just actually holding yourself and standing in certain ways will help you have that come through your voice and even through your expression. So maintain approachability. And again, connection means building interest and excitement. You want to be able to capture their attention, and you want them to get excited, and that will lead them to take action, whether that's to award you $500 for having the best pitch, or it might be to follow up with you afterwards and sit down and say, I'd really like to collaborate with you, or please tell me more about this research. Again, building that interest and excitement will pay off later on, and will really feed into that ability to open a dialogue further. Setting the pace. So when we're nervous, especially when you walk up on this stage and you've got 1 minute or 5 minutes to pitch, you're trying to pour all this value and all of your hard work and energy into this 60 seconds. And you can go really, really fast because you're trying to cram it all in, or you're just really nervous. Don't be an auctioneer. I see that quite a bit. And that just comes with practice and actually having a really good base knowledge. You guys are all experts in your field. You know your research in and out. So don't let that make you nervous. You know what you're talking about, and you're going to do a great job. So don't try to hurry. Set a good pace so that you can stay within your time limit, but still be understood. And again, keeping your language simple and concise will really help you be able to do that. If you find that you're rushing, just pause for a breath of a second and just take a breath and regroup. No one will probably even notice. I'd also give them a chance to probably to catch up with you if you feel like you've been going too fast. You can recover Don't let it throw you off. Choose your words. So this is something I like to do beforehand when I know there are certain things I really want to highlight. Like I keep saying, simple and concise. Have those few key words that you want to keep in their mind and use them over and over again to really drive a point home. And for you, it'll help keep you on pace and keep you on point. And then take care to enunciate. This is really important if your audience is not native English speaking or not native to whatever language you're presenting in. You might be presenting in another language. They might be struggling to keep up. So it's important that you take time to enunciate, and the practice of trying to make sure that you are enunciating your words will help slow you down, help make sure that you're choosing your words wisely. And so just practice that. Practice enunciating each word. And then don't read your slides. That will be really helpful. Slides, we'll get into this a little bit later. Slides are there to be kind of like note cards, like a quick reminder, and also to help the audience follow along and ingest what you're trying to present to them. But please don't sit up there and read your slides. I've seen so many horrible presentations where that's exactly what people did, and it kills the audience. You lose them really fast, and it kills your engagement. So don't just read from your slides. And then again, keep it simple and concise. Use simple language, be concise with your words. All right, so content to include in your pitch. Like I said, you walk up there, you've only got 1 minute or you've got 5 minutes, and you have all of this research and knowledge and value that you wanna make sure that they're really aware of. And the temptation is to overfill and to overpack your slides and overpack, maybe you've created some kind of script or note cards. Don't try to fit it all in. You're really, especially if you're pitching for a competition or you're doing some kind of showcase or something, this is just an introduction and maybe a very brief overview of your research. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to pack it all in. Remember, you're trying to open a dialogue. So you can get into all the juicy stuff underneath. Right now, you're just trying to capture their attention. So just do an introduction and an overview. Keep it easy to follow. Again, if you're overpacking it, it's going to be hard for them to walk through all of what you're saying. So just keep it easy to follow and just really focus on key pieces of information. Identify beforehand what are the things they need to know to understand what I'm talking about. Just the basic overhead. What are the chapter titles? Not exactly the whole book or chapter, but what are the key pieces of information that you can use in a minute or 5 minutes or however long that you might have to communicate the value and the interest there around your research without overwhelming them or trying to over communicate. And then again, leading to a deeper discussion. That's really all you're trying to do, is you are just giving them an introduction and an overview, and you're wanting them to come to you afterwards and engage deeper or to ask questions. Asking questions doesn't always mean that you haven't explained it well. It really could just mean that they have a lot of curiosity and you've really engaged with them. So you're just leading to a deeper discussion. And it's the book cover, not the whole book. So keep that in mind. If you're writing out a script and you're writing out an outline of the things you want to cover in your pitch, remember, it's just a book cover. It's the synopsis on the back. It's not trying to read the whole book to them. So that will help you. And then supporting visuals. So I know for the SOPS competition, pitch competition they have coming up, you get one visual, one slide, right, Joseph? Yep, one slide. So one slide, that's it. And in a poster session, you also have one poster usually. Of course, it's usually a very big one, but you only get one visual for this pitch competition. But for any visuals, again, the temptation is to overpack. You walk into a slide and everyone has the text is so heavy you can barely read it, and it's 10-point font. You don't want to do that. One of the best pieces of advice I had in graduate school was my marketing professor said 5 lines a slide, 5 words per line is your target. Now, obviously, you're not always going to get that. I've actually broken the rule on this very side. I have more than 5 lines. But in general, 5 lines, 5 words a line. A picture or a diagram equal 1,000 words. That is so true. If you can communicate visually what you are saying, it will help them process information in 2 ways, right? Audio and visual. And so it's actually, if you possibly can present whatever it is you're communicating in a visual way through a diagram or a picture, I would highly recommend that you do that. because do you want your audience to be reading or listening to you? If you have very heavy text on your PowerPoint slide, they might be trying to read your slide and they're not listening to what you're saying. So make sure that whatever visuals you have are really just supporting your dialogue or supporting the narrative that you're giving and the audio that you're providing, and not distracting from it. It should just be a supporting, not the leading highlight. And then reinforcement, again, maybe picking out those key words or key terms that you really want them to remember so they're able to engage with you and understand. Again, they're reinforcing what you're saying, not distracting from it. And then use colors, highlights, and underlining. So you've noticed probably through my presentation, I've taken keywords I wanted you to remember, and I've put them in red, or I've underlined something. Those are great ways to draw attention to something important without overwhelming them. And especially if you're using some kind of percentages or numbers or a key fact that you want them to remember, putting it in bold or highlight, using it on another part of the slide, anything that you think is really key piece of information. There are ways that you can highlight that or bring attention to it. And that way it doesn't get lost in the shuffle of everything else on your slide. And they can take that away and use that information with you later when they're hopefully talking to you afterwards. And then white space isn't bad. This is one of the key pieces of advice that a designer friend of mine has when she is giving feedback on pitch slides. White space isn't bad. You want people to be able to read through a slide and to capture value from it without being overwhelmed, especially if you only have a very short limited time with them. And so having a little bit of white space just helps things can focus the eye, and it's not a bad thing. Don't be afraid of it. And then practice, practice, and more practice. I'm not saying that you should write a script and memorize it. I would actually advise against that. I would say when you're in the shower, cooking, brushing your teeth, driving in the car, practice your presentation. Practice what you want to say, the words you want to communicate. Record yourself. That's one of the things I really, really encourage. In fact, I run a pitch coaching session once a month, every month, and I record the session and give the recording to them. And that way you can see if you're saying certain words too often, like or like, or any of those space filling words. Maybe you'll be able to see that your body language is a little rigid, or you're looking at the wrong angle of the camera. Practicing and recording yourself practice will help you catch your own tics and help you feel more confident when you're actually in the moment pitching. And then practice with others. You could even invite someone onto a Zoom as you're recording and make sure that they are able to follow and understand what you're saying. It's especially helpful if they are not a person who is familiar with your area of research. So maybe find someone of your friend group or your network who is in a very different area, and practice talking to them and giving your pitch to them. And if they can process and understand what you're saying, you know you're on the right track. So it's really helpful to practice with a diverse set of people and who have a varying degree of understanding with or familiarity with your research area or topic. And then practice under similar conditions. So if you have a 1-minute pitch, practice under a 1-minute constraint. If you have 5 minutes, practice under a 5-minute constraint. Are you going to be standing or are you going to be sitting? If you're doing a video pitch, like up in August, it's going to be a Zoom. It's going to be over Zoom. You might be sitting. So practice whichever one that might be. And then if it's in person or remote. So if you're giving a presentation via Zoom, you might want to familiarize yourself with that platform. Sign on, do a Zoom meeting, see how the camera is set up, see how it looks when the slide is live. Because like right now, I see you all in tile form over to one side. So that's kind of where I'm speaking to right now. But if you walk in the first time and you don't know where to look and you don't know where you are, it'll be jarring and it'll throw you off. So practice in whatever conditions it might be. If you know that you're going to be giving a presentation in a certain room on campus, go to that room when you can, when it's empty. Practice standing up there and observing the room and get some comfortableness with the space that you're going to be inhabiting. And I feel like that's really key because nothing can really take you off. You've already been there, you're familiar with the room or familiar with the software, and you're not worried about it. So practice. And then I've actually, thanks to Raja, found several good examples. So again, I usually discourage people, especially if you have a timed pitch, from using audio visual, because I've seen it go wrong almost every single time I've seen someone try to use it. However, because this is a workshop, I hope it will work. But I wanted to give you two really good, very quick examples of what this should look like. So we've learned theoretically, we're going to learn now what it looks like well done in practice. So let's see if I can get this video to work. I hope you guys will be able to hear it. Tell me if you can't. Okay, so I don't know. It's not playing. Okay, that's all right. So I actually have this, I actually didn't know if it was going to work because, again, like I said, it always goes wrong when you try to show a video in your presentation. So I will, this link is available on YouTube. It's called 1 Minute Pitch Ideas. The first one, as you can see, this young woman here, she's going to iterate what, she's going to demonstrate really well what Raja is going to be talking to you about next, which is storytelling. It's a way to really connect with your audience and get them emotionally and mentally invested very quickly. And it's by telling a story that is that grabs their attention and also incorporates information. The second pitch, which comes directly after hers on this same video, is a man who's pitching very much in a problem solution style, which is what the SOPS competition will be like. And many pitch competitions are like this, where you're talking about the problem you're trying to solve and how you're going about solving it. And so we can send these slides out if you would like them, but you can also just Google this. It's on YouTube. It's called 1 Minute Idea Pitches. It's from TEDx. It's a great, they do a really great job. And so I highly encourage you to go ahead and watch this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Raja, who's going to talk to us about storytelling. Oh, she's going to make me go all the way to the end with this. That's fine. That's what we'll do. All right. So.
All right, Laura, thanks. Thanks, Laura, for that. So I'll give a bit of a background here. So when I was doing my MBA program some years ago, I got the great opportunity to be involved with the team that was presenting, did a lot of pitches at business plan competitions, including a competition in Louisville. We also went to a competition at Rice, the Rice Business Plan competition in Houston, which maybe some of you may have heard of. It's really well known throughout the country. It's where you get in the audience, you get investors, you get industry experts, and so it's really exciting type of arena. And it was a great experience for me. And after that, since that time, I've also been involved in judging of different pitch competitions of various length pitches, including shorter pitches. So in that period of time, there's part of my experience that I've learned is about this idea of storytelling. So that's one key thing that I want to share with you. And this is something that I found from an author about how to tell a great story. And I think these are really useful. So as Laura has mentioned a few times, it's really, really important to know which audience you're speaking to, who is in your audience, and be able to just kind of relate to them. And I really love the idea of the grandmother test. I've taken that to heart many, many times. And if your grandmother is indeed a Nobel laureate, then you could use your spouse or loved one. I think I've pitched on many instances, practiced to my wife, and she's given me a lot of great feedback actually, and helped me revise my pitches. And the other thing is, think about what your message is. What are you actually what's the moral? What are you trying to communicate to the audience? Do you want to convince them of something? Do you want to persuade them in some direction? Or, do you want to educate them of something that is not well known or is not well understood? The other aspect is, in order to get the, to relate the audience and get the emotional connection with them, is to draw from your own experiences, right? So your own whether it's career or life experiences. So I highly encourage, thinking about those aspects. And something not to worry about or not to not do, basically don't do this, is, don't think that you don't have the ability to tell stories. Everybody has great stories in them. And, don't necessarily, it's about the cause. It's not necessarily about you having the starring role in the story. The other thing, especially for shorter pitches, is don't necessarily inundate yourself with all these unnecessary details and get into the weeds about a particular topic. I mean, you're not going to have the time anyways, right? And especially if it's a 1-minute pitch. Next slide, please. And, especially for when we're talking short pitches, these are the things that are very important. Keep it simple, as Laura said, make sure it's clear and focused. Before finishing strong, a strong finish is important, but which we'll talk about next, is having a great way of opening to the audience and attracting and gathering the attention of your audience. So one of the things that I know I've struggled with before, and it's a tough thing, is, how do you come up with this story, right? How do you do this? And, you can brainstorm ideas in different ways. One is, just kind of think through all the different, important moments or transformational moments that you've had. How has that moment kind of changed you, who you are? What did you learn from that experience? And how do you communicate that? How do you get your audience and to learn from it? And what can they learn from that moment? Another way is, think about what your dream is, what you want to achieve out of this. And once you have that in mind, then you can come up and create goals out of it and use those goals in your pitch. Another way to look at it is, what's inspired you? What has inspired you to do the type of work that you're doing right now? For example, why did you decide to do a particular type of research? Why are you doing cancer research? So those are the types of things that could help you generate an interesting story to relate to the audience. Next. So I think this is a pretty awesome illustration that I came across, and it's looking at the differences between communicating your, let's say, research in an academic setting versus in a business structure or in a business setting. So in an academic setting, you might start a lot with, because who your audience is, of course, right? So going back to the audience thing. So you might start a lot with the background, the details of the experiments, the nuances, the science, and that's kind of the majority of it. And you're slowly building up to what the conclusion of your, experiments are or studies are. And the conclusion actually ends up being, on a relative basis, a smaller part of your overall talk. Whereas when you're in a business setting, you want to be impactful and you want to show what the impact is. So you want to have the conclusion and the outcomes as a larger part of what you're trying to communicate. And then you want supporting evidence and supporting points that are smaller parts of the talk, but that support your overall thesis and your overall conclusion. So I found this to be extremely valuable in terms of visually to picturize how you would talk to these two different types of audiences. Next. So as I said, we need to, grab the attention of the audience, and, some people call it, having a hook, and there's different ways to do it. And I'm, just going to random examples that I've come up with in the next 2 slides. So this is one example that I'll read here. When I was growing up, I saw my grandmother suffering from this XYZ disease. And during that time, I realized the impact of the disease on her and her family members around her. And since then, I've been interested in this disease, and that's why I'm doing this research, right? So you get the motivation of why you're doing that, and you're drawing in the audience to what you're going to be talking about next. Okay, so next slide. And so here's another way to approach it is, have you ever dealt with this problem, XYZ problem? There is no solution in the market right now. to overcome this problem. And, one loses so much time struggling with this issue. And, imagine if you had a solution that, alleviates this problem, cures this problem, and eliminates all this lost time. And say, you might continue from there and say, there is a solution, there is this novel solution, and I have this solution. And, so you might go on from there. And this kind of describes this idea or this format of, going from the problem, describing what this very unsolved problem or unmet need is, and going to the novel solution. And then once you have this novel solution, describing, what you bring to the table. So why you? Why are you bringing this novel solution? Why should it be you? So I think these are kind of some ways to think about, and some things to think about how to start your story. Next, yeah. So, and wrapping up your story is important, and as you get to the end of your story, you want to conclude your story by trying to find a way to reconnect to how you started, whether it's about your grandmother or how you started that story. And if possible, try to include, some type of call for action that engages the audience and makes them want to, contribute in some way. So you could say things like, please support me in my efforts to help improve the lives of all these grandmothers around the world suffering from this disease, right? Or you could, and then you could ask, you can have an ask, as they call it, and you could say, are there, physicians out there that could help me as a collaborator? Please come talk to me afterwards, or something, or, things like that, or even funding if that's what you want to seek. But it's all these different things, and you want to come out with, something that's an ask that engages the audience. All right, next. So I just wanted to share what, the importance of storytelling is out in the real world, right? And believe it or not, Microsoft, there's a lot of other companies you can check, but they have a job. There's a position called chief storyteller. There's actually this position, right? And this has been on the rise over the last several years. And what the person in this position might be doing is helping communicate the news and the message that the company has to the public. How do you communicate that in a proper way as a story? And they may also be involved in, marketing of products. It's not just about marketing the product. You might have seen a lot of TV commercials and ads out there. I mean, it's about a story around that. And so being able to communicate that, drawing in the customers and the audience that way. And then, I just yesterday, I did a search on LinkedIn. If you go to the jobs on LinkedIn and just type in storyteller, there's like more than 2,500 hits for jobs that contain that description of storyteller in it. There's a platform that I encourage you to check out called Story Collider. And it's pretty cool. And they talk about this theory. And it makes sense, right? It sounds very sophisticated, but it's narrative transportation. And, it's this idea that, you have the audience in the room, you're telling the story, but you want to try to transport them. You want to try to make them feel a part of the story, and, that they feel that they're actually in this story. So that's kind of the idea of narrative transportation. All right, next slide. So I'll end with a couple of quotes here, and these are from, again, this one is from Microsoft. So you can see here, it's very easy to slip into celebrating yourself and celebrating your product, but it's a lot more rewarding to go and find stories of where those products actually have an impact. That's Microsoft. Next, yeah. So this is from IBM, and it says, with Watson being such a magical technology, IBM is now in the business of stories. Relations and magic. It's no longer about selling things. And so I think it's, storytelling, it's just think of it that way. And it is a short pitch, but try to come up with a concise story. And to go back with, to reiterate on what Laura said about practicing, I highly encourage that, practicing to any of your loved ones or friends. And furthermore, practicing yourself aloud. And just hear how you sound, and practicing in the shower. So those are all, I think, great ways to do it, and just to keep doing it. But yeah, I'll give it back to Laura now.
Right. So we'll actually these are some of the resources that we have available. And again, we're happy to share out this slide and some of these resources. Alan Alda has this wonderful book, If I Understood You Would I Have This Look on My Face. He actually also has a website, aldacenter.org, about communicating around your research. So we definitely highly encourage you to check out those two resources. There's several articles here around effective communication, and the story collider that Raja mentioned. You can check that out online. Speak Your Way to Success on thepitcher.org. That's a great resource if you're starting to construct your pitch or looking for ideas. Again, the 1-minute idea pitch video. I'm sorry I couldn't get it to work, but please do go check it out. Like I said, they're only 1-minute pitches, so you can watch a couple of them on the car, on the phone, wherever you are. They're great examples and will really help you kind of start thinking about how you want to pitch. And then, like I said, Perfect Your Pitch is every third Wednesday of the month. It's online. I'm available. I'd love to have you come on, and I'm happy to listen to your pitch or talk to you about ideas about how to construct a pitch if that's what you're working on for your research or for a presentation. It can be for any presentation you're coming up or pitch. So we more than welcome you to engage with us on that event every month. And then best3minute.com is another great resource, as well as BOFDA. I don't know if you wanted to hit this last one, Raja.
Yeah, so I'll also talk about Best 3 Minutes. So Best 3 Minutes is interesting because on their website, they also have if you just have to register, but they have I think free registration. You can download an actual template. They've got a canvas, that their own way of kind of indicating how to prepare for a pitch. So that's kind of interesting. BOFDA, I came across, she's a speaker that does a lot of training. She has her own training. She does presentations on basically how to tell a story, how to communicate, how to do pitches and presentations. She also has a blog on there, but it's kind of pretty cool and interesting stuff. She's a former news anchor, and I think she's written a book as well. But yeah, it was pretty cool stuff. Great.
All right, and so at this time, I'd like to invite Sophia Koska. Sophia is a postdoc here at the University of Kentucky. She is going to talk about her experiences that she's had as a postdoc pitching and communicating around her research, and some of the lessons that she's learned. So Sophia, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I did have a PowerPoint prepared, but I think I'll just go ahead and talk. So like Laura mentioned, I am currently a postdoc here at UK. I got my PhD at Michigan State University in pharmacology and toxicology. So a lot of that research was based in drug addiction and depression, and a lot of my experience kind of based in that realm of research. Actually, and a lot of what I've learned along the way in graduate school and through my postdoc experience has been covered by Laura and Raja. So I think a lot of what I'm going to say will probably reiterate things that you've already heard, but I hope that they highlight how important these concepts are. So I guess in graduate school, I think was mainly where I got most of my experience. I got to present posters and give oral presentations at the national level, at the regional level, and both locally at my university as well. So when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to say, I kind of went back and counted, and I had gotten anywhere from 8 to 12 opportunities each year in graduate school to present. So had a lot of experience there. And I also just kind of want to point out that I think, or in my opinion, there are a lot of forms of science communication. And it's not just based upon what you've done scientifically based around your research. I also really value outreach as well. I was heavily involved in outreach back in graduate school and got to talk to people of all ages and all levels. And I think that has really contributed to how I'm able to explain my research to others as well. Very similar to the grandmother method, I feel like if I can explain what I do to a middle schooler, then I can explain what I do to just about anyone. So some of the things that I learned along the way was particularly for poster presentations or small group presentations, I would just outright ask my audience, you know, what is your background? Are you a pharmacologist? Are you an immunologist? What are you even doing here? And so after hearing their background, you know, like sometimes they would say like, oh, you know, I'm actually an immunotoxicologist. I'd be like, all right, then I know to take a step back and kind of explain my background research a little bit more. Whereas if someone comes to me and says like, oh, you know, I'm a neuroscience professor at such and such university, then I don't have to take a step back and say like, oh, you know, let me explain this brain region that I'm working in. And let me tell you about addiction, and let me tell you about depression. I could just make assumptions and they would catch on, and so I could move further along in my presentations. So other types of communications I think are also very valuable are when you're, I think a lot of people these days are blogging and writing about science and their research, or just kind of topics that are very timely right now. I think that's really important, especially because it has applications in other types of science communication, such as writing manuscripts and grants. I really believe that learning how to communicate your research really helps you connect with people, and going back and getting practice and seeking opportunities to practice is key. So the more you present your posters, the more you give oral presentations, the more questions and feedback that you're going to get that you can use to improve both your communication skills and also your writing. I think because I had gotten the opportunity to present so much in graduate school, that when it came time for me to write up a fellowship, I took what I had learned, both physically doing research, but also through some of the questions and the feedback that I had gotten. And I wrote a fellowship proposal that got funded, which was fantastic. And the same thing for a lot of my poster presentations. A lot of the questions that I got, I would take and make notes of them. And then when I put together my manuscript, I would address those questions. And then my first authored manuscript in grad school got accepted with minor revisions, which was fantastic. So for me, going around giving those kinds of talks, poster presentations, oral presentations, really, really helped me out scientifically. And then not to mention learning how to pitch your work really helps with networking as well. Because, you know, at the end of the day, when you're going to a mixer at a conference, you need to be able to tell people what you do, you know, in 1 minute, or maybe in 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Those are usually kind of the 3 time points that I use. And I just kind of judge the type of conversation and where it's going that way with, you know, how much do I actually need to tell someone about my research? And then I think I guess the last thing I'll mention that I've learned is to genuinely use your feedback. Because like I said, the feedback that I had gotten helped me in other areas of communication, like in getting fellowships and having manuscripts, you know, accepted without having to do 10 more experiments. And I think it also really helps your presentation in the long term. I know I've sat in on practice presentations for friends in grad school, and you give them advice and then they don't take it. So when you go to their actual real presentation, sometimes it's not that good, and sometimes it comes out, sometimes it shows, you know, when the audience is asking questions that could have been addressed had they followed your advice. So if you're given advice, I, you know, recommend taking it. I mean, if you know, go with your gut too. If you think that someone's advice is wrong, don't take it, but by all means, at least consider it. So yeah, and have fun, obviously, because it's a whole lot of fun to talk about your work.
Thank you, Sophia. That was fantastic. I really appreciate how you said you kind of have, you know, you kind of gauge like how much information do you really need to communicate, and also having that 1, 3, and 5 minute kind of idea pitched down that you can pull out because you've practiced it so much and taken all those opportunities to talk to other people. So thank you so much. At this point, I'd like to open it out for questions to any of the people who have presented. If you have a question, please feel free to ask it now. and we'll be happy to do our best to answer. Looks like I have a question here about Perfect Your Pitch. So I did put a link to Perfect Your Pitch in the chat, but you can also contact us and we can send you the link. It's every Wednesday. It's also in our newsletter. So if you sign up for the OTC newsletter, Perfect Your Pitch is usually an event that is listed in there. So you can always always get it. But again, it's always at the same time. It's always the third Wednesday of the month at noon, and it's over Zoom. And so you can easily engage with it at any point in the future. And there's no limit or no restriction on what type of pitch or what type of presentation you're giving. We will sit with you and we will help you run through it and give you advice or just let you do practice to a group. So you're more than welcome to come on anytime.
And Laura, just to add maybe here is about the book, the Alda book. I highly recommend that book. I did read that, and some of you may recognize him obviously from the famed MASH, right? But he takes basically things that he learned in an acting school and some of the things he learned in acting school to now train science communication. And he goes around to different universities, and so he has an institute, but the read is fascinating. I mean, the way he tells the story is really interesting, and how he stumbles across this idea of being able to communicate and in his own challenges that he had, and so it's really interesting. So I encourage it to check out that book.
Awesome.
So I don't know if you can see it. I actually just bought it last week, so I'm excited to start reading it.
Preview, it's awesome. No spoilers.
So I do actually have a question. You talked a lot about knowing your audience, all of you, and I know you kind of touched on this, but in the case of a competition, you don't necessarily know exactly who the judges are, the level of expertise. So do you have any kind of ideas or tips on how to approach that particular piece?
Right. So for most competitions, a lot of times they will list who the judges are in advance. And so you will know I would encourage you, if you do get that information, to look it up, check them out on LinkedIn, see if they've written any articles or work in your area of research. But if you're walking into an audience that you don't have a specific knowledge of, like I said, just start simple. That's just go right back to that, because the odds are, especially in a competition that is this diverse and is open to a wide cross section of campus, it's likely that not everyone is going to have a great deal of familiarity with your research area and topic. So just keep it simple, and like we said, do the middle schooler or the grandmother test and practice on people who are not who may not work in your research area, to make sure that you're communicating in a way that and in terms that they can understand. That would be my suggestion and advice, is just go back to being simple.
And just to add to that, to reiterate that from a different angle, is that especially when you're talking about short pitches, right, 1 or 3 minute, you're not going to have time for that. You don't want to go into the weeds. You don't want to go down that path. You'll run out of time. So make sure you budget that. And so you're going to be at a pretty high level for this 1 minute pitch.
Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, Erome, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I have a question for all the non-sciencey people, or I'm making a big assumption, because a lot of times in my experience, people who sign up for these kinds of presentations and talks tend to be more from the STEM area. And I'm always curious about folks who aren't from that field. What are some of the talks that you've heard where you were like, big mistake? Absolutely did not understand what that person was talking about. And what are some of the best examples of research talks that you have heard, whether those are pitch presentations or different other ones where you were able to say, okay, I understand what this person's doing. It looks really good. So I just wanted to hear examples. And I know Laura, you would be great. Also Tanya, I think, and Raja, I want to hear some examples of those if you guys have some.
Well, one thing I'll say really quick off the bat, and then give to Laura while I think some more about that. Good question. But the one, unfortunately, the one pitch that we could not show, which is the very first one, that's a non-STEM, that's non-science one, and that's a really good one to check out there. There are a few others in that slideshow that, or in that show of pitches that have non-sciencey ones as well. So that's a good one to check out. Do check that link out.
All right, so I have a question here. It says, what if the research is more related to the adults issue, and should I be considering that that is also understandable to middle school students? So you're saying that your audience is geared towards adults, but should you try to make it understandable to middle school students? And I think I can tie this in with your question, Arame. So when I worked at MIT, my faculty advisor, it was the dean, one of the deans of engineering. But one of the programs MIT has is that the professors teach in schools there locally in Cambridge and in the wider Boston area. And so it gets them out of the classroom and gets them engaged in the community, but it also helps them learn to communicate at that middle school level. So even if you are speaking to a room of adults, you don't know what their education or background might be. You might not, they may be someone with very little familiarity with higher ed or academic type communication and with research in general. So I would say the point about talking to a middle school is not about being condescending or about dumbing it down. It's about using terminology that the everyman can understand. One of the best examples I have of this is actually not necessarily a presentation, it's actually a book, but you could watch him presenting. And I actually, his name is slipping my mind, but if you look up the book called Animal Spirits, it's by a Nobel Prize winning economist. And his book is written in a way that every man could understand it, that anyone could understand it. Even if you don't have a background in economics or finance or business of any kind, he wrote the book and he speaks. When you listen to his lectures or you listen to him talk on YouTube, you can look him up. He does a wonderful job of breaking down the information so it's ingestible to anyone who is listening to him, and it actually makes you interested in economics. And he uses stories to do that. He uses people as examples, and he keeps his language and his terminology very basic and easy to understand. And so that he's one of the people that I would really encourage you maybe to read a couple chapters of his book or look him up online and watch some of his presentations. But he's written the book Animal Spirits, and he's the person I would say has done the very best at it that I've seen. But also at MIT, we have a program where people have to do that. And so our faculty advisor, he was very good at being able to walk into a room with anyone. And he did a lot of recruiting and did a lot of work in trying to get sponsored research or industry to buy in. And so he had a wide area of a wide experience in speaking to people of different levels. And he could speak at that very basic level around mathematics and engineering, and also around the value of the research that MIT was doing. And so I would say his name was Vlad. If you want to look him up, he probably has a lot of great talks. But yeah, it's not about being condescending. It's really about just keeping it so that anyone at any level could understand. I hope that answers your question.
Great answer. Thank you, Laura.
Yep. All right. Do we have any more questions or anything that anyone else would like to add, or resources that you would like to throw in that you found useful?
I have to tell this resource. You should all check out a video by Kurt Vonnegut on YouTube that's called On the Shape of Stories. Kurt Vonnegut is a very famous fictional author, but just do a quick search for The Shape of Stories. It's very funny. And
do you have a link to that you could share in the chat?
I do, yes, I'll share that.
Please do. And the Animal Spirits, that book, that's John Keynes. So he's an economist, and yeah, John Keynes. So if you look him up, he's pretty awesome. He does a fantastic job. All right, if that is all, if we don't have any more questions, please, you can feel free to reach out to OTC at any time or engage with me. I'm happy to engage with you. And if you are working on the pitch competition and you are accepted, we'll be having a pitch coaching session with Raja and myself on Friday morning. So you'll have the opportunity to practice, and I encourage you to do that. And other than that, thank you so much for coming today. I hope that you found it useful, and that I look forward to maybe engaging with you around your research and since I do not have a background in deep science tech, if you can explain it to me and I understand it, then you're doing pretty good. All right. Yep, great. Thank you, Arame. Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what the book she linked is, the one I was talking about. Thank you for finding that. But other than that, I will see you all soon, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.